Beautiful.
Take a bow
Look
now.
how this turns.
That's awesome.
Whack.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
All right. You have to start the recording.
Yeah, we're already. We've recorded
We've
all of
been
this
recording.
for posterity. We're good. Thank
Yeah.
goodness for edit tools.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
Be my help to pass it back if you need to.
you have your mic.
Yes.
You can roll, Ben.
You have to navigate the whole mic for you.
No. We'll see. I think I'll be okay. We designed CRD, DTR, and PASS to work with single hands.
All right. So just announce yourself, what track you're leading, and what you're going to demo. And we're really going to try to keep everybody to 5 minutes. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Langley. I'm on the MITRE team working on the prior authorization reference implementation, and I'm going to be giving a quick demo of the CRD, DTR, and prior authorization support reference implementations. And just a quick note, what I'm showing here, I'm using the Logic at Health versions of CRD, DTR, and PASS. So all this code is on GitHub, but if you guys download the request generator and the test CHR, you guys will be able to run through this yourselves. So this right here, the screen you're seeing is a request generator. So this is basically a testing tool that we created that lets you launch the whole process. So here, I can go ahead and select a patient, and I'm going to go ahead and select patient 13 Vlad, and I can select a device request. And when I select him, you can see the information populates here. And when I hit submit, this triggers CRD, so you see that the cards come back here. It says that authorization is required. And clicking on Smart App will launch the DTR Smart App. From here, it's now, okay, so this is the authorization for the EHR, so I just sign in with my account I created. And now it's going to pull up the questionnaire form. And I believe this is for home oxygen. So once Logic Health loads, you will see the questionnaire form.
Maybe we should have everyone on the go-to meeting.
And it's using CQL to pre-populate some of the information. So that's how you can see here, like first name, last name is all pre-populated. So there's a filter button in the top right, and this will show us only things that aren't pre-populated. For the sake of time, I'll only fill in the stuff that are required. So I'll just put in dummy values for all of these, just so that we can submit the form. And once I go ahead and submit the form, it's going to send the full bundle off to, oh, and of course, this is blocking the submit button.
Which is blocking
Control minus, and it'll shrink your screen size. Thank
I think
you.
that's fine. Okay, so then when I hit the submit button, this then sends that bundle off to the prior authorization service. Right now, there's no logic in there to actually read the bundle and decide like how to determine whether it's granted or denied. It's just randomly assigned. Because like I said, we're from MITRE, so we don't have that actual logic implemented. And so then it's going to come back here, and there we go. So this one loads. So you can see here this prior authorization was pended. This is, oh, wow, your screen's really far behind. On my screen, it shows that it's pended. There we go. So now that you can see that it's pended, we can go and we have subscriptions implemented. So for this one, I'll show WebSockets. So I can subscribe to WebSockets as long as. So you can only subscribe if it's pending. And unfortunately, it may have been super slow and it may have already come back as granted. Oh, no, there we go. So there's the WebSocket. So as long as we haven't already received the new disposition by the time we hit subscribed, as soon as that new one comes in, it'll automatically update this web page, which, like I said, hopefully we didn't miss that window. It's kind of a waiting game now.
This is what it feels like to be a provider, in case people aren't clear on that.
And also, to be clear, the delay here is only 30 seconds, not a few minutes.
This is why we're going to record some of these.
So yeah, this is just a test UI, so it shows this is the claim response that's returned on the side. So you can see the information here. You have the pre-auth reference, the disposition was pending, and the outcome was queued. And then the right side, right now, the only things we have implemented are some simple refresh and some subscribe. So REST hook, oh, there we go. Oh, no, yours is just delayed. We have REST hook, so that's if you have another server, you could we could send a notification there. WebSockets is obviously using sockets to update, and then polling, which the IG is still figuring out exactly the schema to use for that, but the polling will just regularly poll the pairs past server to get an update.
Ben, when you mean that there's another hook that you could send it someplace else, does that mean you could send it to another application, like a consumer-facing application, to give them the status, or?
Yeah, so when I mentioned that, that was for the REST hook. So for REST hook, you need to have another server up that could receive it. So obviously, this UI in the app here would not be able to do that. But if the provider had another place that they wanted to send it to, they could. And per the IG, to access this, to send a subscription, all you need right now is the patient identifier and the pre-auth ref. So if you have either of those, you could go in yourself and create your own subscription. So I think this was really slow because it should have had an update by now. So we probably missed the window because it was going too slow. But if I hit refresh, there we go. So that refresh is like a manual poll. Go and get the new data. We can see it's granted.
All right, great, thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Who wants the screen next?
Joe.
Yep, Joe.
Joe.
Do I need to give it to somebody else?
Yeah, Joe.
I'm working on it.
Oh, you're on.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what she didn't do anything.
All right. So I'm going to give a brief overview of kind of what we covered in the PCDE track, and then I'll give a short demo at the end of a little bit of a client interaction with the reference implementation server. So this is a pretty bad delay. All right, so we had a decent amount of engagement over the 2 days for this track. A lot of the discussions were kind of figuring out who would be playing what roles in hymns, and then also talking through a couple of the messaging aspects of things, which I'll get to a little later. So kind of an overall summary of what PCD is. It's the primary focus is addressing continuity of care between payers. So when a member changes a plan, they don't experience any lapse in treatment. So they wouldn't have to pay extra for something that they wouldn't need to, or they wouldn't lose or have some care terminated. Kind of how this is going to occur, according to the IG, is a communication request will be sent from the new payer to the old payer, and then all the active treatment will be sent back to the new payer so that they'll have access to that. So this is kind of a slide just demonstrating what this might look like in a member-mediated exchange. So, for example, the patient would log into the new health plan, and then they would authenticate to the old health plan, granting permission. Then the OAuth process would occur between the old and new and old health plan. Communication request would be sent to the old health plan, and then the communication would be sent back, containing the coverage information. And then another scenario is where it's a non-member mediated exchange. So the patient would just provide the old health plan name, and then the new health plan would kind of compile that information and send it to the old health plan, and the process after that is pretty similar. And then this is just another alternative is instead of providing the actual identifiers, they have just more member details. So this is a very similar slide. So a lot of what the discussions for PCDE were revolved around at this Connectathon were talking about who would be playing what roles in hymns and kind of figuring out where things would be sitting for that. So we have GuideWell Edifax would be playing the role of the new payer, and then they have some, they would be kind of bundling up that, creating that communication request, be sending it through our RI in order to then, that would kind of just be sent to CMS Medicare Free for Service, who would then send us the information and would be sent back through. So this is kind of the the goal for HIMSS is kind of what this is going to look like. Ultimately, MITRE's RI will be kind of taken out, so it would just be the payer-to-payer exchange. So a couple of issues and challenges that we've talked through a little bit are the exact correct resource for what should be sent, like what should be attached. So there will be a bundle containing the coverage information, and so it's whether or not that'll be contained in a communication or a message that hasn't entirely been determined, so that's still for discussion. And then also, how is the patient or member actually going to be identified? There's still some discussions around that. All right, and so last I'll have a short demo. All right, so in this case here, this is just a client app that I have created, and so this would be potentially the new payer. So this person, Joe Smith, was part of the old organization, and so they're kind of registering in this as a new payer here, and so then the request can be sent. And then the communication is sent back with all of the active treatment information for that patient. Yeah, so that is all I have.
Thanks, great. Next on the slide again.
I don't know if anyone else from MITRE is presenting. You are?
Oh, are we going back?
Yep.
Formulary resource. We have five plans. Within each plan, you can see the description of the tiers and what the copay and coinsurance are for each tier, and whether there's a mail order option. And then you could also search for, this is basically supposed to provide a poor man's emulation of what a consumer would do. So you could look within a plan for the inhaler that's in the HIM scenario, for example, and see all of the instances of that, drugs of that name that are in the formulary with their copay information. And more interestingly, you could do a kind of a cross comparison. So if I wanted to put that inhaler into a comparison, I can run a comparison of all of the plans that are in this formulary and show comparison of what the copay and coinsurance would be for one of the pharmacy types for all of the drugs that match that description. So that's pretty much what there is. Any questions?
And that fits the scenario because that's the same drug as there that we have in the scenario.
Right.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Well.
Okay, who am I giving it to?
Oh, wait. Are you going to be first?
Yes.
Oh, to them?
All right, so what Srini and I worked on is the post of an MRP from data originating in the iScripts networks, EHR into the UHC infrastructure. So a couple of requests that we'll show here. First of all, is wanted to show that we can get the data requirements. So we do the post to the UHC link, and we get their data requirements for.
Hey, Zem, can you speak up a little bit or hold the mic closer? Thanks.
Is that better?
Yep.
Way better.
All right, so we do the data requirements request post, get the data requirements back. At this point, we're not dynamically or real-time interpreting or basing our request on those. And then we go over and we have a canned MRP that we pulled out of TouchWorks. Which right in the token. Use the token and send this to UHC, and we get back a 200 OK and some text indicating that the transaction was successful. So, Srini, now do you want to share your screen and show what you switch on your side?
Yep. They were good. They were switching back and forth to each other. Nope, you're all set. While Srini's sharing, who's doing the Z Omega Cerner demo?
Look under Sachin on the.
Okay, great, thanks. Srini's gonna finish. He is. Is he not? Do I have the wrong Srini? Nope, it's UHC.
So, yeah, this is why we do Connectathons, right?
Yes.
It's awesome.
We want to work out these bugs here amongst friendly. Instead of
Yeah,
out on the
Srini,
floor.
I'm showing you as presenter, so.
Yeah, I'm able to see the sharing, but the screen is on.
Screen itself is not sharing?
I'm not gonna make any sarcastic comments here. No, I honestly didn't use PowerPoint, so what am I to?
Yeah, it does show the sharing, but it's not cooperating with the sharing. Stop.
Everybody stop.
Wait, now, wait.
I'm gonna make him organizer and see if that changes it. It looks like it's stalled though.
Maybe, make Nick.
Hey, Nick.
Is that it? Yeah, but it should be sharing the whole screen. It shouldn't matter.
Nick, I just made you presenter.
Oh, it's a local app. Okay, you want to just talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Basically, basically is here when XAMPP send a request to us, we have the gap information. We actually process that gap and close the gap, and that's how the process is taken care. Yeah. That is one of the biggest measures that we are actually doing. That's what I have here.
It's a metric.
It's a metric.
Come to him and you'll see him.
Or one of 20 calls between now and then.
Thanks.
Sympathetic.
Who's out there? Let's see if I get. You guys are.
Did I give it to the right person? Sachin? Yep, I shared it. So do you not have?
Yeah, just have to accept the share.
Awesome.
Okay, so what we were working on today is the CRD, DTR, PAS. We were working with Cerner. Instead of actually showing the connection here just for this demo, we just took screenshots as we're moving along. So this is an example where the physician does an order in the EMR, and a CVS hook is used to access a service created by Z-Omega that comes back to tell that physician whether or not a pre-auth is required. So it comes here sending a message saying, and in this case, they would have to access the Zio Smart app to access the ability to request auth for the home oxygen therapy as per the scenario. Then they are presented a screen, and you can see here that we've done a call back to the EMR to pre-fill some of the screen elements that are required of an authorization, including patient information and the provider. Then the next screen is the information for the auth. I should have said, just as a preface, Z-Omega is a solution that provides utilization management for a number of health plans that are here and all across the country. So we do have the rule sets in our solution. Thank you very much. We do have the rule sets in our solution that would be able to tell a provider in this case whether or not what they're submitting can be automatically approved or not. So we're going to take you through that scenario. So as they complete the auth request here, and I guess the other part of this is also where you could potentially launch a solution like MCG and have the physician go through the clinical protocols as well to determine approval or not. But in this case, we just have our information that we've placed here. So this is where then it bumps against the rule set in our solution back at the health plan called Jiva. An episode is created in Jiva. The health plan is able to manage that from that perspective. If it's not automatically approved, it's pended and routed to a nurse's queue who would then manage it and get back to the provider. But in this case, we've decided more of a happy path. The the pre-authorization comes back as approved. They then have the authorization number available to them in real time. They can perform the service and use that number to submit the claim when the service is complete. Then this is an example of what it looks like in Cerner when that is complete, the record, so that if it ever has to be accessed again, that you can see the final report of the information that was entered, and at the bottom it would have the authorization number that came back from the health plan. And that's all I have.
Good question.
Yes.
What you showed in Cerner, did you use document reference there, or what did you use?
Document.
What's the document
Can you
around
just repeat the question?
fire resource?
So did we use document reference on the screen in Cerner that we showed, and the answer to that was yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Shree's up next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sri Malikadi. I work for MCG. So last week, Connectathons, we demoed our Smart on Fire app, both CRD, GTR, and PAS. For this Connectathon, what we have done is previously we used HSPC, our EMR simulator. So this time we worked with Cerner to launch from Cerner core platform. So and also this is our this Connectathon also we connected with Florida Blue and Edifex and Cerner in preparation for our next Connectathon end-to-end workflow. So what we're going to demo today is how we integrated Cerner, our GTR and PAS app. So this is our app. We registered with Cerner, and as you see, should be able to launch the app from Cerner. And you can pick a patient. Now, when you're ready to launch, now it launches into the MCG DTR Smart on Fire app. So as at this point, what it is doing is it is basically connecting to the Cerner Fire server, and it is retrieving all the various resources required for us to do that reasoning. So it takes a bit of time. This is basically retrieving quite a few resources. So the whole purpose on this particular encounter, we see a whole bunch of diagnoses. The one we are interested in here is the heart failure CHF use case. So you can pick a guideline. This is basically, think of this as a criteria from MCG, medical necessity criteria. So far, last time when we demoed, we were able to see that automatically some of these criteria already answered based on the EMR data. Right now, we are working with the Cerner to populate the patient with the appropriate scenario so that it automatically highlight this criteria. So for now, for the demo purposes, we can actually choose some of these questionnaire. Now, there are two things you can do. You can actually write back to EMR based on the criteria. Then you can also actually submit a prior auth. So we basically use the MITRE's reference implementation to actually submit prior auth. So this is the ID, we basically get prior auth ID. So we can actually use the postman to verify that so you can do the bundle, the fire bundle which is submitted to the prior auth endpoint we question. So that is the demo. Any questions? Yeah, next I think what we are working on for next Connectathon is we wanted to work with Cerner and the Edifex and Florida Blues to connect end-to-end using CDS hooks and also the Edifex, the PAS endpoint.
Can I just add a little
Sure,
bit to that?
sure. Thanks.
So what MCG was just showing is taking their app with the guidelines, running directly against Cerner. So what we're working on, the next step is we've taken the CHF guideline, expressed that as CQL and put it in a card. And so they're working now on the Smart on Fire app, unless Bob turns our whole world upside down. That'll take that card and put in their Smart on Fire app, and then they'll do what they just showed. And then the X12 loop going back is the other piece we're adding, so that it takes the output of the Smart on Fire app and then uses the 275 envelope for the smart stuff, 278 transaction to come over and then actually run against the rules in the cloud at MCG after we unpack the 275 and then send that back. So fairly aggressive timeline, but I think we've got most of the pieces in place. We're hoping to show at we will show at January Connectathon.
All right.
You're gonna do awesome.
Thanks, John. Sam, next. So, next is Sam from Cerner.
Mm-hmm.
Go, Sam. You're not Sam.
No.
Steve, sorry. Who said? You
Oh,
said,
no.
You said Sam.
I thought it.
Sam is from Diana.
Oh,
Sam's from
got
Diana.
it. Okay.
Sorry.
So who's presenting? So I have Cerner and diameter. So who is that?
Oh, you combined Cerner and diameter.
No, they're together. We just handed the mics to the wrong person.
Oh, okay.
Did you hand Sam? It is Sam that's presenting, right?
Sam is presenting, but I handed it to.
Okay, because I'm like, Sam is on the go-to, so.
I handed it to Peter.
Yes. Derwin Day with Healthcare Service Corporation, this is the CDEX group. We had a couple of issues that we addressed last day, and we have a couple of presentations. Closer? How's that? All right. One is, first up is Sam Schiffman from Diameter Health, and following him is Stephen Hill from Cerner. So I'm just going to hand it over to him.
Oh, here, you're in here twice. Hold on.
She said you're in there twice.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no, I
Dumped it and re-added it. Does that one work? There you go.
All right, people hear me. So as I said, we looked at a couple of things over this Connectathon. And the first was we asked a couple of questions about the CDX. We don't think these are necessarily the most important questions, but they're the ones that came up to us. And one of them was whether we could improve the interoperability between systems by allowing the metadata to actually specify what query parameters were required in order to make requests. So we came up with a sort of sample schema of what we could put in there that we could then check on the requester side before we made the request that we in fact validly provided these parameters. And we're not going to show a demo right today, but if you want to see something, you can stop by me later. As I said, we have more interesting things to talk about today. This is just a quick, here's what that schema would look like again. Then we talked about another question, which is if we do have a situation where, say, a clearinghouse is fronting a number of providers, how can we aggregate that data correctly for that metadata so that as clearinghouses say is fulfilling a capability statement, and their capability statement is that we only really take a request for communication, how can that request for communication in fact include all the metadata for all the queries that are underneath it? So we discussed that a little bit. We don't have a specific solve for that problem, but we think that that's something which needs to be addressed.
And Sam and Karen, we're going to be kicking off the deployment committee in January. So we should talk about those types of questions that are coming back to bring to that audience that's coming in.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate, I think what we're acknowledging is FHIR has been traditionally that client server with nothing in between, and there are lots of entities in between. And how do we support those transactions? So, thank you. Oh, yeah, one more. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Who else is going?
Steve.
Why? Yes, seriously.
Already called us the wrong name twice.
Steve, are you on the go too?
Yes.
Oh.
Steve.
I'm looking. Oh, here he is. It's Kit Kat name.
Last name first.
Oh, somebody else had it.
All right, so what we were demoing, or not demoing, but presenting today is basically the CDEX communication request to forward documents. So what you're seeing on my screen right now is actually a screenshot from our server logs. As you can see, the reference here for this task is coming in from Edifex. We also communicated with Metal. Basically, here's our CDEX worker that's actually taking those requests and sending back whatever the bundle of the payloads are. So in this case, this was progress notes, and back to those communication resources. Those basically would post and then be consumed by the various payers, or if you're doing a beneficiary or whatever is actually calling this. And from that, so this is a screenshot from the Edifex domain of that progress note that was actually pulled in from from this request. So the full workflow would be that you would do a communication request on a specific patient and request whatever clinical data you may be looking for. Our service at Cerner goes out and finds the various resources, the .grefs, the binaries, whatever that might detail, and repackages that into a bundle and delivers it as a communication to that resource. And this is an example of it. Today, we're only focusing on documents, but by January, we hope to have actual resources across as well.
That's it?
Okay, awesome.
More? Thank you. For the payers who haven't been tracking CDEX, this is really pretty high value for post-payment review. So next up is Steve from Metal Solutions.
Okay, so what we're trying to show you here today is a simulation of CRD, DTR, and the DA support. The first demonstration we're doing is in conjunction with Cerner and UHC. What you're seeing here is just a simulation of the EHR system. So I log in and that's taking a minute. So we've provided the ability to do multiple lookups or multiple prior auth supports from the same UI. So I go here and we'll go through the UHC use case first. So I pick UHC as my payer, and in the patient information, I put in my just the first name, last name. We pick the gender, and few pieces of information that I need here is what kind of service are we doing a prior auth for, and the HCPCS code. So once we select those two aspects, when I click submit here, what is essentially happening is the CDS hooks are getting invoked, and when the CDS hooks are getting invoked, the UHC rules are running, and what is being returned is that the prior auth is necessary and the link to the smart app is coming back. Now, the link to the smart app actually contains the CQL in it. So this is the CRD DTR portion. Now I click on the smart app. Oops. We have a redirect URL here. I think we can take a look at that really quick. But what happens here is this is where we log into the Cerner Millennium system. And that is where the DTR is pulling the information from the Cerner server, the Cerner's Fire server. And you can just try it again.
While you're trying again, can somebody decode DTR for me real quick?
Templates and rules.
Documentation, templates, and payer rules.
That's it. If I need to do something, tell me what the rules are and tell me what I need to actually document in my record so I can get paid.
Just not use all of your acronyms. I got my own set.
Come to the dark side. You're totally the bright side.
Oh, they're still so good. Okay. Is there a cost in here?
Give us just a second while we pause and set up some configuration here.
Okay. Is there a cost?
Yeah, right here. Eric.
Oh, there he is.
Right there.
It's right
Oh,
in front of you.
you're so close.
You have to put the other lesson.
Eric, do you want to give the tracked up table? DT does some troubleshooting.
Okay.
Do you want me to give you the screen or
Boy, she's gonna.
are you all
Yeah,
set?
if you can, please.
What? Yeah.
If you can let.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't look at the
we're
man
gonna
behind
switch-
the curtain.
Okay, we're gonna switch over and have Eric give us the readout for. And then, is there a demo too? Anyone?
We have a screenshot.
We have a few screenshots.
Okay. Back end.
Okay, awesome. Hold on, Eric. Eric, are you logged in?
I am.
Okay. Oh, there you are.
Do you automatically?
There you go. You're all set. You just have to share your screen. A safe place.
Okay, so, all right, so, okay, you can hear me great. So here we are with the notifications track, and this is really IG that's basically been rewritten and fresh off the press, ready for ballot. So it was really helpful to have participants today to get a little bit of,
Tire kicking.
some kick in the tires. I was thinking some road wear on there. So we had participating with the team from Cigna with the server. We had the Wildfire set up an endpoint for us as well. We had a reference implementation from Logica here as well. We had a few clients here, Logica reference implementation, and then Keith from Audacious Inquiry had a really clever way of creating tests. He asked me if you have test messages. I said, no, unfortunately, we don't have test data. So he said, okay, well, I'll convert some ADTs to Vinci notification messages. And then I started but never finished up using some Cynthia data to generate some notification messages. Never finished that. That's a thought. Okay, so here's a few screenshots for you. And so here's basically we have a reference UI in there, and basically the interaction is very exciting. You send a message, post a message, and get a response back. So I don't know, showing that is pretty dull. But we have a few screenshots. We have the reference implementation for with the client UI, and then next in line here is Keith's transform from ADT message to a fire notification transform. So he took an ADT message and he based on the specification in the IG, created this notification message bundle, and there it is in all its glory. And then what you do is you take these, he took the message and he pinged or posted to the reference implementations as well as the other servers to get notifications. And so Cigna team has, just to verify they got they sent a response message back, but they verify it by having a UI on their end that shows the information that was sent across the wire as a notification. And basically what we're doing here is saying, in our use case that's defined in the spec is an admit or a discharge. And here they're saying, okay, we're going to send it to the care plan team members that this patient's been admitted to ER, and so this just demonstrates that they received that information. And we kind of did a little tire kicking and looked at some issues. We had some issues with the clients. They're expecting a few things that weren't available. For example, a Java client, which is pretty widely used and copied from Happy, needs to have a metadata information before it does anything. And as well, there's some response messages. We have discussions right now with the Java client authors about this behavior.
few accomplishments. We want to define, sync versus async was an issue that I had as an open issue, so we kind of established that these notifications really for the IG will be synchronous messages, but there's no response message coming back. We talked a little bit about the async case. That may arrive when you have to batch all these notifications and they get very large. Then we think we're going to go to a bulk data guidance instead of using the IG here. And as far as the happy path, we describe the happy path in the IG as we do in all our IGs and kind of ignore the error paths. We talked a little bit about that. And so you have an operation called process message. What you can come back? Well, we talked about this. There's several 200 messages, and this is where the Java client gets a little angry when it doesn't get what it wants. We feel like all those should be successful. And then we list a few here and what the indication should be. So we'll be probably adding a little bit more guidance to our IG in addition to what's in the FHIR specification.
Awesome.
Okay.
Are we all done?
Oh,
Time is up.
no.
Okay. All right. And then there's a few specification issues we discovered for messaging that we want to make a few change requests for R5 to clarify and loosen up the text that's a little tight right now. And then some interesting things that Keith reviewed. He has access to quite a few ADT messages, and we discovered there's a few fields in there that may not be known where we defined in the IG. So interesting, there's an encounter type. When you send a notification, you may not know what the type is of your encounter because the person shows up. You don't know what it's about, and you're sending out notifications before you have that information. On the other hand, about half had reason codes in the encounter, so that was interesting. But very few had types.
Either codes or text.
Either code and code or text, yeah. So it's been helpful to look at, especially for a mid-discharge, it's been helpful to have, review some of the ADTs and see what information's in there. It helps to see what's going on with the guy. Okay, we didn't have any test data. We'll have some next time, but the good news is it forced the clients to create their own unique ways to create their own test data. So.
Well, we're actually using V2 to Firework that's being validated in H7 to generate the notifications off of the ADT.
That's great.
That's an interesting use case.
This is very good.
Oh, I'm sorry. We can go back if you want.
That's right. I was paying attention. We'll go back.
Can we go?
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry about that. We had a small configuration issue. So just picking up from where we left off. We have the code, we put in all the information, and this is where we invoke the CDS hook. And then the response comes back that a prior authorization is necessary, and it came back with the smart and fire link. The next step is where we had an issue. But so this is where the smart and fire app gets launched, and this has the SQL, and this is where we've been we're actually pulling information from Cerner on this step. So as you can see, the app came back, and the information this has the SQL in it, and it has already completed the DPR portion of it, where the information that is available in Cerner has already been populated. And since we are in a demo mode, we just wanted to bring this up here as well. So this gives us a preview of what the actual fire resource bundle is that we would be sending as part of the prior auth request. So this is just informational at this point. So this kind of walks you through what is in the claim resource and all of the other information as well. And once this is done, we click on the submit for the prior authorization. And actually, Srini from UHC has their end configured in such a way that they're auto-approving. If Srini, your screen share is working, if you want to pull it up.
I can bring it up now. Okay, here actually is in the screen is actually where we have all the prior auth requests actually coming in the queue here, and if there is a rules or anything is not actually auto approved, it's going to show up here also. It's we can actually do here. I didn't get any request. Yes, I got it. Yeah, basically here is a queue is basically here is a request that actually contains the XML, the export transaction, all that information right here, and along with the file resource. The file resource here need to be encoded. We are actually decrypting and showing here. That's a request, and the response is actually we are automatically sending back the export response back to the same publication. That's all I have. Yeah. Any questions?
So it's ready while you're sharing. Can you show the MRPS?
Yes. Can I take up one more minute here?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Here earlier is the detail, and the same thing is here is we get all the MRPs submitted here, and here is the JSON whatever we are receiving for the MRP, and we process this MRP in the backend and closing the gap. Then the process pick up all the MRPs submitted here, and all the MRPs actually pick up from here our job, and the process and close the gaps. That's how we are doing with the Veradam to some of the measurements.
I knew I should have plugged it in.
No,
You told me not to.
Well, I can plug back in now that I know that it was just on.
Sorry, gang. Keep going as if nothing happened.
Don't mind the man behind the curtain. All right, thank you.
That's all.
Oh, thank you. All right. Last step.
Oh, no, do you have another one to do? No, hold on, Steve T has another one to do.
Sorry.
If we just have a similar one for CMS use case. So we have another similar demo that we did for CMS use case. So here, instead of picking UHC as the payer, we're going to go with Medicare fee for service. And in this case, we go with the same patient information. However, we're going to choose a different service that we're going to provide for him, or rather that we're going to check for him. We're going to look at the non-emergent ambulatory support. And we pick one of the HCPCS codes in that area. And now when we click submit, instead of going to UHC's rules, the rules that are going to be run are actually Medicare fee for service rules. And the flow is still the same from a UI aspect, but behind the scenes, the mechanism that's being executed is completely different. Instead of going to UHC rules now, we're running Medicare fee for service rules. So when I launch the Smart App again, it's similar thing that happens, but when the form pops up, you will see that the data elements that are being requested and the documents that are being requested are completely different because now they're based on the Medicare fee for service non-emergent ambulance CQL. So as you can see, there's a lot more information that got pulled in from the Cerner file server again. And again, the preview shows you the resource bundle that is being pushed. And when you click submit prior authorization, so here we don't have any mechanism to do an auto auth. The request just gets queued and we get a pen status back. Once the review contractors do their little magic, then you can see that the status actually gets updated. Just a minute.
So actually the two apps that we have shown, they are exactly following the same process for both the payers. So basically we just want to show that like the app is the same, but depending upon the CQL and the questionnaire, and the initial CRD call, things change, and that's what like we were trying to get through this interoperability. Right? So we wanted to demonstrate that.
Guys, that's fantastic. I'm curious to know from the EMR folks in the room, I love the idea of a unified application user interface for the staff, but I'm curious to know, is there an expectation that some of those auths that require more complex data to be pulled in other than just a drop down, that there'll be a queuing function to be able to put that, to queue that to a task list for a MA or a nurse to actually complete versus the provider?
Good question.
It's not like we've talked about it.
Great answer.
If we wanted people to use it.
I think that those details need to be worked out as we progress to see is that what can be pulled from the APIs that are already there. Are there additional APIs that over time make sense to add to the list that we have, or the ones that we're progressing with you or CDI and whatever, are they going to be enough?
Sufficient.
But then there's going to be, yes, there's going to be a question that is not addressed, is that if there is more data to be collected and it's not the EHR that's orchestrating everything, now I need to get these other 10 things that I cannot find. How do I interact with that? So I'm sure that we can find over time ways to improve on that.
Or just maybe to be described differently than maybe it's been, put in the note from a physician, right? That you wouldn't pull directly.
It depends on what data you're looking for.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I said it's a good question, because we need to work through that, what the interaction that would be to enable the smart app to convey to the EHR that they need to collect these X things because they couldn't figure it out. Just go through screen.
Fire tasks.
And so
For example.
for my HIMSS folks, I think that it's going to be important from a product perspective that we really have a clear answer there, because that's going to be one of the biggest objections is the provider burden aspect of now putting all this information in front of somebody while they're seeing a patient. So.
Right, but that's the next step. It's not.
I know. I'm just saying in 2 months we're going to have to answer those questions
In
with a straight face.
observation from previous work that one of my colleagues at GE did in Connectathon is that if you have a way to express the information that's being requested and the responses, that the EHR itself can often figure out ahead of time what's going to happen and can apply some machine learning or other techniques to figure out how to optimize the provider workflows.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So kind of along the same lines, but I noticed in the form fill out that you guys had there that there were values like true or false, and in working with the MCG algorithms, that's kind of a vestige of a form and a questionnaire. So are you running any logics on either end that's actually evaluating resource data values and deriving true or false, or have you tackled that? I'm wondering.
Oh, you're asking us?
Yeah, on the form you have things, you auto-populated true or false, but that's not a data element you're probably going to find in an EMR, so I'm just wondering.
No, actually, it executes the SQL that is being sent by the payer. So the SQL, the logic, the clinical logic is in the SQL. So after the execution, that's what you're getting.
So it would ask a value, say 10, and then in the SQL logic, it actually says above or below 10.
Yeah,
that's how you're handling
exactly.
it. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what we did was wherever we can get the data, wherever we can put in the logic, we just use SQL. But there are always some cases where you just still need to take inputs, so we take the questionnaire. But as Justin was telling, so in the real world, it's never like this, not 2 buttons and you get a prior auth approval. That never happens. But here, what we had is more for the demo purposes, but usually, you can start the smart app running from a particular point, where some data has been filled, or you can even invoke, in an ideal world, you can even send a communication request to an ordering provider, or a supplying provider for the further details about what the diagnosis that they need and all those things. So it is not just one smart app that takes care of these things. You may want to invoke things like CDEX also and pull the data from others. And also in most of the cases, you may start the prior auth app here, and then after some time, you may have to restart it from where you left off. So there are all these things that you may have to take care of.
Awesome, thanks.
So CQL is now one of your 3-letter acronyms. It stands for Clinical Quality Language. It's an important part of DTR, prior auth, as well as quality measures. So we encourage you to learn about it.
Do you want me to stop recording?
No, we have one more. Merrick, IBC.
Right, so for DQM, I know several of us explored our MRP capabilities a little bit more this weekend. or it's not the weekend, it's the weekday. These are usually on the weekend. So we were also asked to evaluate the care gap walkthrough, which basically was to check against cervical and mammographies. So like a provider could check the pair against mammographies and breast cancer screenings, and we could return a gap in care back to them. The problem that we found is that amongst the pairs, we have like very different ways of evaluating gaps in care. And since our systems aren't fully integrated into FHIR, it would be like an easy kind of send back. So when we get the request, we all have different ways of processing that request. And so we would need more of a broad definition of what we sent back to the providers. And that's basically what we came up with. That's that scenario. So no, we will not be ready for this point.
What is an MRT?
Medication reconciliation post discharge.
Yeah, we're still looking.
Oh, anyone want my secret decoder ring?
Acronyms. Right. While we get the
blue screen of death.
Blue screen of death. Saul's gonna. We have. Saul's gonna talk about PlanNet. Provider directory.
Provider directory. We gotta sync our acronyms.
Last time we were here, I think we had like 4.
Different names for it. Oh.
I've now got the white screen of resurrection.
Progress the last couple of days, we had some helpful discussions with Keith from HealthSpark, and they're implementing a PlanNet server and client. So that was good, and we worked with the Aegis folks to get the testing started on PlanNet and formulary reference implementations. Are you sure? Ready?
You're ready. You just have to share your screen.
So similar. We didn't do any interoperability testing, but we do have the reference implementation with the client and the server reference implementation for PlanNet. And the thing I forgot to mention with the formulary is that both the client and the server for both PlanNet and formulary are both out there deployed on Logic Health. So if you do have if you are implementing your own server for PlanNet or formulary, there's a client that you can use to test against it, and vice versa. If you want to test your client against reference implementation server, they're out there. All the details are in the materials that were part of the Connectathon track description. So it's all there. This is the reference implementation for PlanNet. We just have, as you can see, we have examples of the 9 resources that are defined in PlanNet, and you can just plug into them and browse through them and filter them to some extent. And then we have two kind of the use cases that we thought would be relevant for a consumer are in this case, find me a pharmacy that's in my insurance plan that's close to my location, and you can do that query. The tool actually shows you what the query is that's being run against the server, and you can get the list of pharmacies that satisfy that criteria, and then drill down into the information that's in the directory for those pharmacies. So that's kind of the short version of what's in there. I hope someone will leverage these to advance their development of their own tools.
Thank you, Saul. So before I hand the mic back to Mike Gould and the IBC folks, just want to thank everyone for being here. This was probably one of the best Connectathons I've participated in. I mean, lots of engagement and lots of work done. We believe in bringing smart people together and magic happens. So thank you for being the smart people making the magic happen. We want to encourage everyone to please register for the CMS Connectathon coming up in January. So we look forward to seeing you there. For those who are working on the HIMSS scenario, you'll be hearing from us frequently, hopefully not too much, but there's lots of work to get done between now and then. And so if you have any feedback for us, please send it to Jocelyn, me, the PMO, and
Or just
Sandy.
reply to the survey at the link you'll receive in your email.
Yes, please reply to the survey, yes. All right, and so Mike, I want to say a special thank you and a personal thank you to Mike and everyone here at IBC.
I appreciate that, but I really have to hand the baton of thanks to Lori Radford. Lori, if you would come up here, please. Lori is the coordinator here in our Innovation Center at Independence Blue Cross, and the seats you're in, the tables you've worked at, the electric power that you've used, the microphone in my hand, which I'm going to yield really quickly, is all thanks to Lori. So thank you very much, Lori. So in addition to Lori, I just want to recognize the other folks from Independence Blue Cross who are in the room with us today. So if you would please stand if you're sitting. From Independence Blue Cross, we have Eric Thomas and Justin Powell, who have been on the team for MRP and some of our other apps. We have our data warehouse folks, Jim and Gopal. John Varghese was here earlier. Others have come through at different times, and we have Nita Thingalaya, our medical director. Nita's been the co-lead with Julia Skapik on the payer coverage decision exchange. So, yeah, this is very exciting for all of us. This is a brand new center that we've opened here, and this has really served the purposes of the Innovation Center, bringing competitors and collaborators together across the industry to solve the problems that we need to with innovative solutions. So thank you very much, and safe travels, and see you at, is it Baltimore?
Baltimore.
In Baltimore. All right.
And get registered quick.